We begin the current Daf Masech Shabbos Daf Nun Aleph. We begin 3 lines down at the top of the Amud, where we continue with the next Mishnah, continue on the series of this parak, discussing the laws of Hatmana, insulating something before Shabbos or on Shabbos, which have different statuses. One regarding Erev Shabbos, you can't do it with a Meisav Hevel. That increases heat on Shabbos, you can't even do it in something that's not Meisav Hevel. Ashir is co-sponsored by Kal Zich and Yecheskel, Torah Anytime, Daf Yomi. Appreciate those joining us again today on Zoom. Some ideas we're going to speak about in today's daf, starting in the Mishnah, is regarding, although there's a prohibition about insulating warm foods, but that one is actually permitted to insulate, as we have in the thermos, cold foods to keep it cold. That is actually permitted. Additionally, we're going to discuss regarding replacing insulation. Now, although one cannot insulate initially on Shabbos, even you can't wrap anything that's hot, even something that does not increase heat on Shabbos, but you're allowed to replace that insulation. Additionally, we're going to discuss on the middays regarding crushing or melting snow and ice, the halachic problems that could come up regarding melting ice. Additionally, some of the terms and concepts we're going to speak about are regarding kfahar zaken. The wise elder has already ruled, and even though the halacha might be differently, but he's not going to disagree with the elder. Additionally, important halachic concept that's going to come up in today's daf is bishul akum. Halacha is that if a non-Jew cooks something, that rabbinically that's forbidden. But an important idea, this actually came up on Yom Tov when the electricity came out regarding non-Jews restarting the fire. If it's nechal kameshu chai, there's certain exceptions to the rules of bishul akum. If it's already cooked, or in our Gemara is going to come up, if it's same as edible raw as it is cooked, then it's permitted. But as we'll see, adam chashav shani, that a person that's a distinguished personality is expected to hold himself to a higher standard, and therefore he shouldn't take certain leniencies, even though halachically they're permitted. So we begin the current daf Nun Aleph, 3 lines down at the top of the Yomim, where we continue with the next Mishnah regarding the laws of Hatman of insulating. It says the Mishnah like this: what happens if you did not cover a pot? You wanted to keep it warm, no fire. It's not on the fire. You wanted to keep it warm, but you didn't cover it from before day. So the halach is loikis and mishatechshach. You're not allowed to cover it once it gets dark. And we explained this in the second parak of Lamed Al Madal. Now, why did they say you cannot insulate something, even though it doesn't increase heat, when it's Mishech HaShecha, when it's dark, when it's Shabbos? That's a reason, it's a rabbinic decree that you might come to heat it up. What happens is you're coming to insulate it, right? You want it to be warm. Thing is, you realize it's a little bit cold. So you might decide to heat it up a little bit and then wrap it. So I'm not going to let you wrap it in anything because you might come to heat it up. So on Shabbos itself, up until now we had been speaking about from Hatmana from before Shabbos. That was dependent. We spoke about what item is what, if it's moist, if it's dry. We spoke about different qualifications, but that was regarding Erev Shabbos, regarding something if it's Meisav Hevel or not. Now we're talking about on Shabbos itself, if you didn't insulate it from before Shabbos, then the halach is on Shabbos, no matter what the circumstances is, even in the regular towel, even if it's not Meisav Hevel, you're not permitted to do insulation. Now, the Mishnah continues and says, halacha l'maisam, let's say kisahu. Let's say you covered it on Erev Shabbos. But then, it got uncovered. So halacha is mutar l'chasaisai, you're permitted to go ahead and recover it again. Now, the Taisus brings from the Ri that the truth is, it's not necessarily as the Mishnah says, Vinizgala got uncovered. The truth is, you could even actively go ahead and yourself and uncover it, and then go back and cover it again, just like the law says Taisus from Chazara. You're allowed to take a pot off the fire, and we know with the laws of Shia and Chazara, you're allowed to put it back on. Same thing is with insulating. So why does the Mishnah say specifically if it got uncovered? The reason is because we're talking about got uncovered, says Taisus, even from before Shabbos, which is similar to the ratio, which was told about if it wasn't covered from before Shabbos, not covered on Shabbos. Here we're saying that if it got uncovered from before Shabbos, after Shabbos starts, you're allowed to recover it. That's the difference, because if you actively went and uncovered it from before Shabbos with the intention, or it depends on the gears and the tastes, without the intention, but if you uncovered it actively from before Shabbos, actually it would be forbidden to cover it, to insulate it on Shabbos, because that would look like a new initial hatmana. A new hatmana, that was the Gezer Rabbanan. You're not allowed to come to the first time insulate something on Shabbos, even not Meisav Hevel. Therefore, that's why the Mishnah said the wording of it got uncovered. The truth is, says Taisa, it would be even if you actively uncovered it, you're allowed to take off the wrapping. And this is important halacha. If you insulated from before Shabbos, and again with Dava She'ein Meisav Hevel, on Shabbos when it came off, you're allowed to go ahead and rewrap it on Shabbos. That's okay. Now continues the Mishnah. Another halacha is that memali esakitin. You're allowed to fill up a jug, a bottle of cold water. You're allowed to take that and put it beneath a pillow, or beneath a blanket. Meaning, what you want to do is it's the opposite of what we're speaking about up until in this Masechta. You don't want to insulate it to keep it warm. You want to insulate it to keep it cool, that it shouldn't get affected by the sun, by the heat. For example, as Rashi says, importantly, what's going to keep it? You put certain things in the car, it gets boiling hot. He says, for example, a pillow or blanket made out of felt, where it doesn't get heated up from the sun, and that's going to keep it warm, that's going to keep it cool, not to get hot. That's permitted to be done on Shabbos. That's not a problem about insulation. Now, relating to this exact halacha, the Gemara brings the following Amarok teaching. Amar B'Yehuda Mishmol, and the halacha follows like this teaching, is mutal hatman esatzayin. You're allowed to insulate something cold from the sun, meaning that it shouldn't get hot from the sun. And we don't make exero, because what would you think the problem might be? Is that, no, if you insulate it for cold, to keep it cool, which is not a problem, because it's not going to come to heat up anything. To the contrary, you want to keep it cold, but then you might come to insulate for hot. That's the halacha that, no, we don't make such a gezer. But that asks the Gemara, Rabbi Yisrael says, "My kamash shalom. What's this Amar Rabbi Mishmol coming to teach us? Tanina, it's the halacha of the Mishnah. Mishnah said, "Memali od mekitin." The person can fill up a flask of cold water, you can put it beneath the pillow, beneath the blanket. That's the halacha that he's saying. What's he saying more than the Mishnah? Abai said to Rabbi Yisrael, "No tuba kamash shalom." It sounds like the same thing, but he's saying no. He's actually teaching us a big chiddush. Why? If we only had the halacha of the Mishnah, I would have said, Hanimili, when did we say this heter, this permissibility of insulating cold, is only davish in darchi lahatman. Only something that the norm is not to insulate it. For example, cold water. The norm is not to go ahead and insulate cold water beneath a pillow or blanket, meaning it is normal to keep it cool. But it's not the norm way to heat it up, to keep it warm, because that doesn't usually keep it warm. So therefore, yes, there it doesn't make sense to make the gzer to say that you're not allowed to insulate it to keep it cool, because you might come to keep it hot, because that's not the way we heat up the water to keep it hot. So it's not the derech to do atmana for it. Okay, so we'll let you do it when it's cold, because we're not really concerned you're going to do it when it's hot. But something that the norm is to insulate it that way to keep it warm, for example, a pot of cooked food, then actually I would tell you that that you're not insulated to keep it cool because you might come to do it to keep it hot. And that's what Yehuda Mishmul is coming to tell us. Even if it's a davar shadach lahatman, still we don't make the gzeira, and if it's cold, you're allowed to insulate it. I'm not concerned you're going to come to do it when it is hot. Now, however, Amar Rav Huna, and the Ger says Amar Rebbe, he says asal hatman is actually forbidden to insulate cold, not just hot, even cold. Says the Gemara, how could you say Rebbe says it's forbidden? But we're talking about the Brisa, Rebbe hit to lahat nesatzayin. Rebbe said that no, you're allowed to insulate cold, that it shouldn't get hot. How are you quoting him as a contradiction to Rebbe that he says it's forbidden? Says the Gemara, like Kash, it's not a difficulty. Why not? Because this when he said it's forbidden was mekmei de l'shamem Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg. That was before he heard from Yishmael bar Rabbi Yossi. After this that he says it's permitted was l'basal d'sham. He said, yeah, originally he thought it's forbidden. Ultimately, after he heard from Yishmael bar Rabbi Yossi, the Gemara is going to quote right now, then he retracted and he says permitted. What's this story? So the Gemara brings Kihad Yasab Rabbi V'Amar. Rabbi was sitting and was saying the following teaching. Asal lahat me'esatzayin, you're not let insulate cold. Obviously, because of the concern that you might come to do the same thing with warm. So we don't let you insulate it cold. On that, on the Rabbi Shloimy bar Yossi, Shloimy bar Yossi spoke up in front of the Rebbe and he says, Abba, my father, Rabbi Yossi, he already ruled, he said it's permitted to go ahead and insulate something that's cold. The prohibition was only on something that's warm because you might come to be martiach, to heat it up. So Amar, he said, the elder has already ruled, meaning Rabbi Yossi, and that's it. That's the halacha. Even though he said it's forbidden, and that's what he said after he heard that thing, he retracted and he said it's permitted. On that, Amar Papi says something interesting. He says, Bayre, come and see. Look how these Talmudic scholars cherished each other. Either Rabbi Yossi came, if Rabbi Yossi had been alive, he would be subservient, he would sit in front of Rabbi, because Rabbi was the Nasi, he was the leader. He would not have ruled in front of Rabbi, even though, as Taisus proved, Rabbi Yossi was greater than Rabbi. And how do we know that? And Dahar Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi, who is the Memali Makam Avosav Hava, meaning we would know that even though he was greater than Rabbi, he would be subservient, because Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi, who took the place of his father, he was as great as his father, and the Kafa V'Yeshav B'nei Rebbe, he would subservient, he sat in front of Rebbe. So even though Rabbi Yossi is greater than Rebbe, but he would have been subservient when he was alive, and still become a Rebbe says, now that Rabbi Yossi is not alive anymore, and Rabbi Yossi wouldn't even say his opinion, but when he heard the teaching of Rabbi Yossi, he said, K'vahar Zakan, the elder already ruled, meaning he made Rabbi Yossi greater than themselves, and look how great these Talmudic scholars treat each other, look how dear their customs are one to the other. Now another story related to this halacha of insulating cold, Amar Rav Nachman Dari Abdi. Rav Nachman asked the servant Dari, he says, Atman li tzainin. So he asked him to go ahead and insulate for me something cold on Shabbos. That was one thing. Another story that happened was a different day. He said, Va'isli Maya, bring me water, the achim kafel arma, that was cooked by a non-Jew, which that was during a weekday. And he was coming to say, basically, why did he ask him, why do you want specifically water cooked by a non-Jew? Because he was trying to teach him halacha that that there's no problem about bishul akum on water. So Shomer Ravami heard about these two things, and the ikbid Ravami was bothered by this. So Rabbi Yisrael says, "My time ikbid. Why didn't he like these two things Rav Nachman did? Kidav vosei, but he was doing like his teachers. Chadik Rav, one was like his teacher Rav, but Chadik Shmuel, one was like his teacher Shmuel. What are these two teachings? So the Gemara says, Kishmuel, like Shmuel's Dharma Yehuda Mishmuel, which we quoted before, the mutal hatnas atzayim. We quoted this halacha that he rules that it's permitted to insulate cold. So that was okay, like his teacher Shmuel. And Karav is the Amar of Shmuel, Rabbi Yitzchak Amar Rav, and this halacha lamaisa, important halacha, as we said it happened in case that people asked me on Yom Tov, is kol shu nechel kamei chai. Whatever could be eaten in its raw state, like water. There's no problem with bishul agam, no problem being cooked by non-Jew. It's only something that you need the cooking to make it edible, then it's forbidden. But if not, it's permitted. So why was he bothered by this? And that says, who saw Rabami held that Adam Chashav Shani, a distinguished personality like Rav Nachman, is different. As someone sees him being lenient in the halachas of Atmano or in the halachas of bishul agam, although it's permissible, people say, Rabbi so-and-so, I saw him, he insulated, I saw him, the non-Jew made the food for him, and because that people are going to come to be lenient, and therefore he was bothered that he was lenient, although technically it's permitted, but he should be more strict because he's Adam Chashav. Now, continue on this theme regarding the halacha of the Mishnah that said that the Mishnah said if, let's say, Erev Shabbos, you insulated the pot. Again, Dava Hasha'ena Ma'israel, this is very practical. I know many people take a towel, they wrap their hot pots from before Shabbos, they're not keeping on the fire. They insulate with a towel. That's okay, it's not Ma'israel Hevel. But on Shabbos, let's say it becomes uncovered. So the Mishnah says that's okay, you could go ahead and recover. It's not an initial covering. Just like on Shabbos, you're not doing the sin like etchila as we learned regarding the laws of Shein Chazar, but you could do Chazara. Here also, says the Mishnah, you're allowed to go ahead and put it back on. Now, related to that halacha, the Gemara brings term in the Brisa. Although they said, ain't time, you're not allowed to come ahead and insulate. Even if you insulate something that doesn't increase the heat. But when it's already dark and it's Shabbos, you're not allowed to insulate a pot, as we said previously, and this from the Gemara again on Daf Lamed Dalam and Alf. Because you might find your pot cold when you want to insulate it and you're going to come to heat it up. But in Bala Haisis, if you're coming to increase a covering on the covering when it's already Shabbos, then you could add on. So let's say it's covered with one towel, and you're like, I don't know if that's going to keep it so well. You add another towel, that's okay. You could add it on. You just can't do the original placing, but you're allowed to add on. Now, the gears over here in the Bryce is, and Ketzid Hu Oisa, how does he do this? Now, Taisus brings from the Ri and the Rav Pyrus not to be gears the words Ketzid Hu Oisa, because this is not qualifying the opinion of the Tanakama. What we're going to quote in that from Shimon Gamliel actually disagrees with the Tanakama. Tanakama only permits to add on another towel, but not to change and do some other covering. Shimon Gamliel permits even to exchange. And for sure, he would permit to put back on the same thing that you took off, which is not really like a starting about mana. And actually, that's what the Bryce is going to quote. And in other words, that he had another leniency, but therefore it's not, says it's not appropriate to have the Girsa Ketzid Oisa because it's not really qualifying. It's actually disagreeing. He's even more lenient. He says what you could actually do is not just like the Tanakam and Bala Haisev Maisev. What you could actually do is actually Naitilis Sadinan. You could take off the cloth that you had originally put on, or Manechet a glufkarin, and you could put on a coat, which is the Girsa Rashi has, which is like a heavy garment, which increases the heat more than just a cloth because it's heavier. Oh, you could do the opposite. You could also take off, let's say in the summer months. So let's say you're afraid that it's too heavily insulated and it's going to burn the dish because it's too heavy the covering, then you're allowed to take off the glufkarin, and you can put on a sheet. So Rabbi Shloimy is lenient. Not only to the comment if you want to add on, but you could even go ahead and change what was. And he also said another leniency that's in the laws of Atmana. And this is actually the halacha l'maisa. And there's actually an important halacha on some level. It says, Lo yasru, we didn't say it's forbidden to go ahead and originally insulate a pot on Shabbos if it's the first time you're coming to cover on. That's elo isei meichem. That's only that kettle, that pot, that it would have been heated in on what we call a kli rishon. That's where we're concerned. You have a hot pot, that then you now do atmanim because you might come to heat it up when you come in to insulate it. Avapinam and meichel meichem, and this is important halacha. But if let's say you put it into a kli sheni, you pour it into a different pot, and then you're coming to insulate, that's going to be mutter. That's actually permitted. That's a way. If a person wants to get a way to insulate something on Shabbos, but you can't, so what you do is you pour it into another kli, and now there's no more concern of that you might come to b'matich, you might come to heat it up. Why not? Aren't you insulating to keep it warm? Says the Gemara, a very good svara. Hashta akuri kamokerla, you're intentionally cooling it down. Now, we all know the halachas. We spoke about bishul of kli sheni. A kli sheni cools it down because the walls are cool. They weren't heated up on the pot like the kli rishon. So you're intentionally cooling it down. So you think artuchik or martuchla? You think you're going to go ahead and heat it up? No, to the contrary, you're cooling it down. Therefore, we're not concerned that you're going to come to heat it up. And therefore, that's a permissible way of doing hatmana likatchila on Shabbos itself. Now, the Mishnah continues and says, following interesting halacha regarding the laws of hatmana, which really relate to the laws of muktzah, but it's something regarding the laws of hatmana, so we bring it in. It says the Bryce like this. Let's say taman. It's a little of a cheshbon here, so you have to, like what they say, hot cup a little bit. If you were taman, if you insulated a pot in something that could be moved, meaning there's two elements that we're talking about here in the Bryce. There's around it. Really, when we use the word hatmana, we really mean that you're insulating what's around it. Then it's what's on top of it. So let's say when you taman, you insulated something that all around it could be moved. Something that's prepared, it's not a muktzah item. And v'kisa, and on the top, you covered on the top. Also something that's prepared, not like this picture. But davar nitel b'Shabbos, something that can be taken on Shabbos like a vessel. Or another case. Let's say taman b'davar she'eni nitel b'Shabbos. Let's say actually, what you insulated in, the things around the pot, are things that cannot be moved on Shabbos. But the primary thing, as we're going to see from the Bryce, is what's on top. B'kisa b'davar nitel b'Shabbos, you covered it with something that could be moved on Shabbos. So then, either one of these cases, you're allowed to take the food and take the pot and put it back in. Why? Since the covering could be moved because what's on top is not muktzah, so you could uncover the pot, you could grab a hold of it and put it back. But this is the problematic case. Taman v'kisa b'davar she'eini nitel b'Shabbos. Let's say you insulated it and you covered it with something that cannot be moved on Shabbos. So let's say this thing is gizei tzemer. Let's say something muktzah here on the side. And on the top, you have a beautiful money bag, which both cannot be moved on Shabbos. They're both muktzah. Oh, you have a different case. Let's say even shetaman b'davar nitel b'Shabbos. Let's say around here is something like a cloth, something that's not muktzah, that could be moved on Shabbos. But v'kisa b'davar she'eini nitel b'Shabbos, but you covered it with something like this, exactly the picture that we're showing over here. Then you covered it with something that could not be moved on Shabbos. So then it depends. Im haya megula miktsasai. If part of it was uncovered, so the money bag was not totally on the pot, so then neitel. So then you're allowed to go ahead and you're allowed to take the pot. Why? Because like we always speak about, if the money bag is not totally on, so that's not really moving muktzah. Why? Because it's called tiltel menatzat. Because you could pick up the pot cover, it's not totally covering it, and it's going to make the money bag fall down by itself. So that's okay. That's mitzadadai. That's tiltel menatzat. And therefore you could take out the pot and umachz, you could put it back. But vimla, but if let's say not, let's say like this picture, none of the pot covering is uncovered. It's all covered with the money bag. Then as we continue to base, then ein neitel umachz. Then you cannot take it and put it back because there's nothing, you have nothing to hold on to it. You can't grab the pot cover. It's all covered by a muktzah item. There's no way to get to it, and therefore you can't get to it. Now Rashi asks a very fundamental question. He says, I understand that if you tell me that all around it is not muktzah, only the top is muktzah, so what do you mean? Clear around, move away the stuff that's covering it on the sides, because you tell me those things are not muktzah, and grab onto the walls, which are not muktzah, and then tilt it on the side, and then whatever's covering, like in this case the money bag, is going to fall down, like we learn in the Mishnah later on, Kavmem Beis Mabeis. If there's a stone on a barrel, so the stone is muktzah. So the Mishnah there teaches, what you do is you tilt it to the side and it falls down. And let's say it's amongst barrels that you're afraid to tilt it because it shatter the other barrels. You lift it up and you move it away, and then you tilt it on this side and it falls down. So why can't you do that over here? What's the big deal? Because, and this is very practical for the laws of muktzah to understand, could you move something on top of it? So Rashi explains, no, the Gemara there explains that's only b'shachach. If whatever muktzah like the stone was forgotten on there. So that doesn't make what's on the bottom as a basis. It's just you can't move it because the muktzah, so you can tilt it. But if you deliberately left it from before Shabbos, so this becomes a basis, l'davar asa becomes secondary to something that's forbidden, and that's why, in this case of money, you're not going to be able to get to the food. Now, Rabbein Tam disagrees, and there's a few different reasons why, and he says that, no, it's not considered like you placed it over here because your intention is to take it on Shabbos. How could you say that it was a basis that's a base for this if your intention was obviously to move this because you want to get to the wood on Shabbos? Therefore, that's not going to make it into a basis. He says rather what we're talking about over here is interesting. He says we're talking about a type of a covering, like an earthenware vessel, that you put it on the pot, meaning that the pot gets absorbed into the cover. So you cannot just shake off the cover because it's inside the pot, unless you're going to have to lift it up. And that you can't do because the muktzah item is there. Or the Ri says another similar type of an answer. He says that what you did is that you insulated the pot in a box with things that what's around it could be moved. The problem is, but that above the pot, you filled up the whole box with something that can't be moved. So again, the reason why their interpretations are a little bit better is because you can't get to the pot unless you move the muktzah items with your hands, because even though you could move around what's on the side, it's in the box, you can't get to it because you only could get in from the top of the box, and they have a muktzah thing on the top. But be that as it may, that's what we're saying, but even if here is not muktzah, but on the top is muktzah, that's it, you're stuck, and then you're not going to be able to use the food on Shabbos. Now, secondary to these laws of Hatman that we're discussing, the Gemara discusses some other parenthetical laws regarding Hatman. Rabbi Shloimy, he says, and this is his opinion was already discussed in the Mishnah, says, Na'irish al pishtan daka, the fine pieces of flax that fall apart when you're combing it, harehi kezevel, they're like manure, which they increase heat, and therefore you're not insulated with even from before Shabbos. And again, that's the Tanna Kama there in the Mishnah disagrees with that, but that's Rabbi Yehuda. Now, parenthetical to the fact that we mentioned a meichem, which we said if you're pinam a meichem, then it's permitted to do atmana. So we discuss another halacha regarding to a meichem. Menichem meichem, you're allowed to put a kettle of copper, agabi meichem, on top of another copper kettle. Or similarly, for kedera, a pot of earthenware, you're allowed to put agabi kedera on top of another pot, because though there's the same thing as we're going to shortly qualify, there's no problem about putting one pot on top of another pot. And here actually the girsa depends. We'll read it the way our Gemara has it. But you cannot put a pot on a kettle, or or a kettle on top of a pot. So Rashi says that some have this girsa that we said, and they say what's the reason? Is because a pot increases heat more than a kettle. So therefore, when you have a kettle on top of a pot or a pot on top of a kettle, whichever one, it's going to increase heat in the kettle, which is forbidden to be done. But Rashi says in the Tosefta, the gears is that actually that you're actually allowed to put a kettle on a pot. So be that as it may, that goes on to the different gears about would that be a problem or not. But another thing you could do is with the pot is that v'tachas piyah, you could also seal the opening of the pot, bebetzeg with dough. This is like an unrelated halacha, just saying once we're talking about what you could do on Shabbos, is that you're allowed to also put dough that was kneaded from before Shabbos, so there's no problem about sealing it with dough. But now the Gemara qualifies this teaching, that we said you're allowed to put a kettle on top of another kettle or a pot, again, depending on the girsa, what it is. But this that you're allowed to do that is v'loi b'shvil sheyechamu. But it's not if, let's say, the pot on the bottom was hot and the kettle on the top was cold, that you're not allowed to do. You're not allowed to put it to get heated up from the bottom one. That we're concerned for, it might come to bishul. Ella b'shvil sheyechamu. When did we say you're allowed to put either a kettle on top of a kettle, or a pot on top of a pot, or again, depending on the gears, maybe even the kettle on top of a pot? That's only if you want, both of them are hot, and all you want to do is to maintain the heat. That's going to be something that's permitted, but again, to create the heat, that's going to be forbidden. Similarly, says the Brayser, just like you're not allowed to insulate something to keep it hot, so you're not allowed to insulate to keep it cold. Whereas Rebbe, as we said, although originally he said it's usher, but then at the end, like we brought, he ultimately agreed that this was the Brayser recorded originally. Rebbe hit because he heard from Rabbi Yossi that it's permitted, so he retracted and he says that no, you're allowed to insulate something that's cold. Another interesting halacha that the Brayser ends off this parak with, and so actually halacha lemaisa, is ve'im merazkin. Merazkin, like a zayin, is interchangeable with a samach. It's like imeraskin. You're not allowed to go ahead and crush, which is to break it into small pieces. Lo yasa shelig, not snow, v'lo yasa barid, not ice, b'Shabbos and Shabbos. Why not? You're not allowed to do it b'shvil sheizay b'meimav, to make the water flow out. What's the problem? So Rashi brings, because it's moiled. What happens is that you're creating really, you're creating water, which is similar to like doing a malacha. Therefore, it's forbidden. Other Rishonim say the problem is because it looks like schita, like you're squeezing out and you're creating liquid from a solid. So it's actually forbidden to be done on Shabbos. You not go ahead and squeeze out the ices to make it liquidy. Now, but we know people have ices on Shabbos. So actually, first of all, Tosfos says from here you should be careful not to wash your hands. I don't know what they did in Siberia, or Russia, or whatever it was. It's very cold. It says not to wash their hands in snow and ice on Shabbos. And he says sometimes even the water gets icy, and there's like some piece of ice mixed in. You should not wash your hands with that because it's not possible. You're not going to crush some of the ice. And Tosfos says whoever's careful should tavi la bracha because you're going to be crushing the ice. But says the Gemara, says the Brisa, what's important is, but what you could do, and we know this, everyone takes ices in their drink, you're allowed to put the ice in your wine, in your drink, in the summer months to cool down the drink, or to put it into a bowl, although it is going to dissolve by itself. That's okay, but you don't have to be concerned as long as you're not actively going in and crushing it. That's the difference. That you're not allowed to do because you're mailed. But if the ice melts on its own, that's permitted, and one does not have to be concerned with that. We shall return to you the fourth parak of Masechet Shabbos, parak b'me'atimnim, which spoke about primarily as the title of the parak, the laws of atmana, of insulating. And with that, we begin the next parak, the fifth parak of Masechet Shabbos, parak b'ma behemo, which continues on this theme about the laws primarily of your animal, but also as it starts with the laws of haitzah. So that's what the Mishnah speaks about. With what can an animal go out into the public domain on Shabbos? What could it not go out? What does it mean? What do you mean if the animal could go out or not? What does that mean? Because there's halacha that a person is commanded regarding what's called shvisas behemtoi, that his animal should not be doing a malacha on Shabbos. Where do we know this from? So Taisa says it's not from the pasuk many people think. It's not from the pasuk of loisasa malacha ata behemtecha. Because actually Taisa says, as he proves from the Gemara later on, coming in Gimel and Beis, that's actually only referring to one malacha, what's called machamer, as we'll speak about over there, going after your animal. It's actually from the pasuk of Laman Yenuach, Sharcha v'chamarecha, that they should rest. There's an obligation of your animal not doing malacha, just like you're not supposed to do malacha. Now, but there's a very important differentiation. Something that the animal is protected with, or it's some type of an adornment, so that's the norm. That's not considered carrying a load. Just like when you're wearing your garments in the street, you're not carrying that. It's the norm. That's permitted. But something that it's not protected with, that's considered a load, that's considered carrying, that's going to be forbidden. So that's what the Mishnah is coming to ask. What's considered normal for an animal to wear, that it's permitted, it's not considered itzah, and what's not, that would be considered as a masli. So on that, the Mishnah begins and says, Yitzah Gamel Ba'afser. So a camel could go out, these pictures are from the Mesifta, a camel could go out ba'afser with a halter. Now, there's different interpretations of Rishonim what that is, but Rashi elsewhere makes it sound like that that it's a halter, which is basically a rope tied to the mouth. So a camel is permitted to go out with an halter. Now, Teish points out something interesting regarding the opening of this parak, and we mentioned in passing once before. You find, in case you're wondering, like the Gemara in the beginning of Masechet Darm is medayik. In this Mishnah and all these parakim bameh, that sometimes it starts with you open bameh in the yetzer, and then you start explaining for us the first thing that was mentioned, but we mentioned in the previous parak when you talk about bameh, we first talk about the last thing, and that's what the Mishnah there says. Yes, sometimes we'll say the first thing, sometimes the next thing. So in case you're wondering, Teza points that out. That's the Gemara in the beginning of Masechet Darm. But one thing is, so a camel, and it's very important to keep this in mind, we're going to be talking about the type of animal and what could it be going out with. It's specific. The camel specifically could go out with a halter because that's the normal way how you rein in a camel. Now, the naka and the female, and the Gemara is going to explain this, the female donkey, which seems to be more belligerent than the female camel, goes out b'chatam. Again, the Gemara is going to explain. Rashi is a drumiel. It's similar to the English word, and that the Gemara is going to explain what this is for the female donkey, for the female camel. Then there's beluvdikim. Luvdikim is a type of a donkey. Goes out beprumbia. Goes out with a bit. I think I was going to explain also what that is. What's the luvdikim? What's the prumbia? Now, visus and the horse goes out bisher, which that's some type of like a collar around its neck, and it has a hole inside, and they have a ring that they put a strap or a rope, and that's how they draw it. That's how the horse could go out into the Rosh Hashanah on Shabbos. And so this is the Mishnah B'chol Bali Ashir, and all types of animals that go out with a collar. For example, the hunting dogs and small little animals that they put a collar around its neck for its beauty, but that's the norm for it. Yitzim Mishir, they're allowed to go out with that collar. It's not considered Masri to Rosh Hashanah like that. And also V'nimshachim Mishir, they could also be pulled by that collar, which the Gemara is going to explain. What does that mean? What are you talking about that it can be pulled by the collar? Now, parenthetical to this collar of the animal, the Mishnah says, Umaz nalein, and the Gear says, B'mekayman, you could actually spray on this collar in their place. In other words, when you let's say this collar became tameh, it's a kli, So it became tummy from a dead person, it has to be sprayed with the paraduma ashes. So you could leave it on the animal and spray it there on the neck of the animal. And so the tayvel b'kaiman. You could immerse it, let's say it became tummy not from a mess, but something like a sheretz that you have to tayvel in the mikvah. You put the animal into the water, and that's how you're going to tayvel the collar that way, because you're not taking off the animal. You don't have to, you could tayvel it that way. Now the Gemara goes to explain my naka b'chatam. What we're asking, what's this naka b'chatam? We're asking first of all, what's naka? We're also asking what's chatam. So Omar Rabba Babachane says it's nakasa, which is like we explained, a large female camel that's chivarti, that's white. Means to say that type of a female camel is very hard to protect because she runs away. So by her, what's normal is bizmama de parzla, is an iron nose ring. What they do is that they make a hole in the nose and they put that ring inside. So that's it's more sensitive over there by the nose, and it's much easier to protect if you have that nose ring. So unlike a camel, which we said it's ba'afser, that you protect the camel by some type of a halter around it, and that's enough for a camel, a male version, but the female white one, large one, are more belligerent, and therefore you need to have even a nose ring. Now, when we said in the Mishnah, the luvdiki, this type of a donkey, goes out per prumbia with a bit. So the Gemara explains what this is. Umar Bundi says, Chamra Luva. It's a donkey that comes from this country of Luv, which, as Taisa explains, that's from Egypt. It goes out bipagi. What's pagi? So that's what we have here, this picture over here. The Gemara Bamitzid of Testament Aleph that says when two people are disputing over who has the animal, so it says he acquired the donkey and the base pagi. Now what's the base pagi? Because the pagi is the bit itself. The base pagi are the secondary components of the bit, which is the strap on the head and the strap by the jaw. But the pagi itself is actually the bit. So we're talking about that these Luvian donkeys, they go out with a bit, the parzla of iron, so it's just the bit in the jaw, that's how it goes out. Now, the reason why is because these donkeys were very rambunctious. As the Gemara brings a story that Levi Shadr Zuz LeBechazoi, Levi sent money to Bechazoi, the name of a place. He wanted him to buy for him a Leuven donkey. Now, what they did was, they wrapped up his money, and Shadr Le Sari, they sent him barley in his bundle of money. In other words, they sent him his money back with barley in the money. Now, they didn't want to buy him the donkey because it was very far from Babel, which is where they were. It took a distance of like a half a year, as the Gemara says in Baba Kama, the Beis and the Beis. So what did they do? They gave him a good idea. They said, buy a donkey where you are and constantly feed it barley. And then you're going to have a good donkey. You're not going to have to get these chamra luva. Because Lamema, they were coming to tell him, the negiri, the chamara, the steps of a donkey is sari, goes according to the barley that it eats. So therefore they just send him back the money with some barley inside, sending him, we're not buying you this donkey, just feed it good barley and you're going to have a good donkey. Now, regarding this halacha of the Mishnah, the Gemara says that Amr Rabbi Yehuda Mishmol says machlifin, they switched the cases of the Mishnah, lifnei Rebbe in front of Rebbe, shalzu bezu. What essentially they asked was, let's say the naka, which is the more wild of the two, the female versus the male. Again, naka is just the female of the gamal, of the male camel. Let's say the Mishnah says the naka goes out with the chatam, the gamal goes out with the afsa. Let's say it's exactly the opposite. Let's say, what's the halacha with the female one going out with the halter, and let's say the male one going out with the nose ring. What's the halacha? Would that be appropriate, or would that be considered a masay, like not the norm, and therefore like it's carrying a load? So on that he answered like this. He says, look, naka, the female camel, be'afser with a halter, loiti bailach. That's not a question. That wouldn't be enough to protect it with a halter. And therefore masahui, that would be considered a load because it's not protecting it, so it's not something that's integral, and therefore would be carrying a load. That would be forbidden. The whole question could be gamal with a male camel, bechatam with a nose ring. That's a good question. What's the halacha? What's the question? Even the sagile ba'afsa, since you tell me for a male camel it's sufficient with a regular halter, so then when you're using the nose ring, which is unnecessary, masahu, it's a load. Maybe no, niterusa yisei rasa, that's what's called, it's called that it's, here like we're saying, the naka ba'afsa, that's insufficient, so that's a masay. But the question is here, where it's excessive restraint, lo yamrin the masahu, I'm not going to say that it's a load, it's a protection. So I'm doing a little bit more protection, but that's still normal to protect it, and maybe that would not be considered masli. That would be a good question. On that, I'm going to follow Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg. Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg spoke up and he says, Kachama Abba, he says, this is what my father said. My father said the following teaching, which from there you could infer an answer to the question. My father said like this. He said, Arba behemoths yotzis ba'afser. There's 4 types of animals that could go out with a halter on Shabbos. What are these 4 animals? Hasus, a horse. Va'peret, a mule. Va'gamal, and a camel. That's the important one. Va'chamor, and the donkey. Now, he said that a camel goes out with a halter. Lemuti mai. What was my father coming to exclude? Lav lemuti gamal b'chatam. Wasn't he coming to exclude a camel with a nose ring? And that's what he's coming to say. These 4 animals could be protected with a halter, and therefore they're not go out with something more than that with a nose ring. So you see, seemingly, when you do excessive restraint, that's going to be forbidden. So the Gemara, no, you can't infer that. You could tell. I could say a different diuk. He was coming to be lemuti naka. He was coming to exclude that for the female one, be after with a halter, which it doesn't protect it that way. So therefore that's going to be a load. That's what he's coming to exclude. He was coming to say 4 could go out with an after, but not a naka. But maybe actually excessive restraint, like a nose ring in a male camel, actually, maybe would not be a load. However, the Gemara brings them a masnitaton, and the Brisa was taught that you could see that they held. The Brisa says like this, says luvdikim, and as Rashi explains, even the luvdiki donkey is also protected. The gamal and a camel, yotzim ba'afser. They go out with a halter. So although, and Taisus points this out, he says, wait a second, you're telling me that the luvdiki donkey could go out with a halter, then you should be able to resolve the question from the Mishnah. The Mishnah said the luvdiki donkey is supposed to go from be with a bit in its mouth, even though you tell me here in this brisa that it could also go out with a halter. So then, wait a second. Taisus proves that a bit is stronger than a halter. As the Gemara says later on, we're going to end off the daf with that story, that he says, now what do you do with a wild donkey like mine, where a halter is not going to be enough? Could it go out with a bit on Shabbos? So you see that a bit is more than a halter, and yet still you tell me that a luvdiki donkey could go out with a halter, but then why could it go out with a bit? Obviously it's unnecessary, it's Neterusi Seirosa, and still you see it could go out. Says Taisus, no, and it's actually important halacha l'maisa. Says it's not considered excessive restraint because it's the norm to go out like that. So there it's not considered a load. If it's very similar, although it doesn't need so much, that's okay. But if you're doing something excessive, that's where the question is. But that's what you see from the Brisa, that actually the camel could go out only with a halter, and it's coming to tell you not with a nose ring, because actually Neterusa Yisrasa is considered as excessive restraint. And therefore it's a masa, it's a load. But the Gemara concludes and says it's kitanoim. It's a machlokes tanoim if excessive restraint is considered unnecessary and therefore a load, or not. It's part of restraint. That's the norm. The Tanakama says that ein chayu yotze b'seiger. A wild animal cannot go out with a collar of a rope. Chananya says yotze b'seiger, it could go out with a collar of a rope, or anything that restrains it. Now, so the Gemara asks, what's this case talking about? We're talking about a large animal like a bear. You think just a collar of a rope would be enough to rein in a bear? No, rather obviously we're talking about a small wild animal, like Rashi says, like a marten or like a weasel. Then the problem is mili sagila sagir. Isn't it sufficient with a collar of a rope? Why would the Tanakama say that it's forbidden? Allah, rather the Gemara proves obviously chatulik benayu. Obviously the difference between them we're talking about is a cat. Now a cat doesn't need really any protection at all, not even as a small wild animal, because a cat doesn't really want to run away. So that's the machlekes. Tanakama held kivin the sagile b'misnam alma. Since if you want to just rein in your cat, all you need is a small little string, a small little rope. So therefore, masayu, it's considered unnecessary to have for the cat to have even this collar of a rope, and therefore that would be a masayu. So masayu, so it's a load, and therefore it's going to be forbidden. But for Chananya held no, call it terusi sirasa, even though it is excessive. You don't need for a cat such a strong collar. But lo yamin the master, we don't say that it's a load, and therefore it's going to be permitted. And the Gemara concludes, it says halacha kechananya, which is that an excessive load is not a problem, it's not considered a masli, and therefore that's permitted to go out with an animal that way into the street, even though it doesn't need it, it's still going to be permitted to go out as part of the protection of the animal. Now the Gemara concludes with a story related to this halacha, as we just referenced it before when we said Taisus. Levi berei de Rav Huna bar Chia and Barabba bar Huna have a kazi baruch, they were both going on the road. Now, Kadmei Chamar de Levi, the donkey of Levi went before the Chamar de Rabba bar Huna, went before the donkey of Rabba bar Huna. Chalash daiti de Rabbi Avuna. So Rabbi Avuna was disheartened because he was greater, and he thought that Levi had done it deliberately. So he was bothered. Who does he think he is? He's going in front of me? Now Taisus wonders because it sounds like you have to honor someone on the roads, but Rabbein Tam is bothered because the Gemara in Brachas, Daf Mem Zayin and Aleph, says that you don't have to honor someone only if it's like by an entryway there's a mezuzah, which obviously means on the road you don't have to honor. So why was he bothered on the roads when you're making a right turn? You say, oh, I see Rabbi so and so is making a turn. Maybe he should go first. No, you don't do that. You don't honor the roads. So Rabbein Tam answers, depends. There, if you're not going together, everyone's going their own way. You just happen to meet. Then you don't have to honor. But here's that they were going together. Then you're going together, a whole entourage, then you do honor no matter where you are, and therefore that's why he was bothered by that, he didn't honor. So, but the truth is, Levi didn't do it deliberately, his donkey just happened to go in front. So Amar, so Levi said to himself, Emele Milsal, tell something to Rabbi Ravuna, so that as we get into him Bezim and Alf, the itoisiv daite, that he'll calm down, he'll realize I didn't do it intentionally, he'll realize it was just the animal. So Amalei, he said to Rabbi Ravuna, he said, Chamarsha Sakavram, a donkey that's a really bad nature. Could go and say, like my donkey, he was trying to say, whoa, this crazy donkey went out of control, so he could know that he didn't do it deliberately. He says, Ma lotzis b'prumbi b'Shabbos. What's Allah? Could it go out with a bit on Shabbos? In other words, we only said regarding those luvdiki donkeys, they're really rambunctious, they go out with a bit, but regular donkeys are sufficient less than that. So he was trying to hint him, say, such a crazy donkey, could you go out with a bit on Shabbos? In other words, is it considered excessive restraint for this animal or not? Because look how wild he is. And that Amalei said to him, this is what your father said in the name of Shmuel, halacha kechananya. Halacha was like a chananya. It doesn't make a difference if it's in the Tirusei Serasa, and in any ways would be permitted. And that's how the Gemara concludes with that story, just to illustrate this idea again that halacha like chananya, that in the Tirusei Serasa is not a problem anyway. Some of this we spoke about today's daf, Shabbos Daf Nun Aleph, was we started with a new Mishnah. Continuing on the halachas of Hatmana, we said when it's already Shabbos, then it's forbidden, even something that's not Meisev Hevel, still going to be forbidden. And the reason is, as we discussed in Daf Lamadalad, because Shema Yirtich, might come to heat it up. But the Mishnah said, let's say you had covered it up, but it just got uncovered, then it's permitted to go ahead and cover it again. Additionally, we said that regarding cold, you're allowed to do Atmana if it's that it shouldn't get heated up, that's permitted. Now, in the Gemara in Amoris says the same halacha, but what was Neschadish was that even though it's something that the norm is to insulate it, and that is for hot, normally that same way that you're keeping it cool, people would do it to keep it hot. Still, we don't make the gzer. That's something we would not have known from the Mishnah. The Mishnah talking about water. Water, you don't usually heat it up that way, so maybe that's why you could insulate to keep it cool that way. The Amor was Machadish that even he introduced this idea that even if that's the way you would heat it up, we don't make a gzer that you're not allowed to keep it cool because you might come to keep it hot, which is forbidden. Now, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi originally said that it's aser. Then afterwards, he said permitted to go ahead and insulate something that's cold. And as the Gemara says, Kam Mechaven Zeh, because he heard the ruling from Rabbi Yisi, so he retracted. Now, although it's permitted to insulate seinen, but the Gemara says Adam Chashav, a distinguished person, should not be matmin seinen, and also he shouldn't do, let's say, bishlakim even of water, which is no problem, because Adam Chashav people will learn, so he should be more stringent. We also said in the Gemara related to the law of the Mishnah that you're allowed to be meisif hatman b'Shabbos, and possibly, which is a machlekes, that possibly even exchange the actual thing that you insulated. Also, we said another hat of Shimon Gamliel was that when you change it from one mechem to another mechem, then actually initially you're allowed to go ahead and insulate on Shabbos in davar she'eino meisev hevel. You're not allowed to, because no, if you're coming to cool it down, you're definitely not going to heat it up, and therefore we're not concerned that you might be martiach. Now, we had a brisa, that same brisa, that the primary idea that we see from that brisa is that it depends if when you're doing hatmana in something that cannot be moved on Shabbos, really the primary thing comes down to the cover. Because the sides, it doesn't make a difference. As long as you take off the cover, you could go ahead and take it out. But even if the sides are not muktzah, but if the top is muktzah, if there's none of it that's uncovered, then you can't take it. Because ultimately, and we have different interpretations, Rashi, Rabbi Tam, the Ri, that you can't get to it because the top is covered, then it's going to be problematic, even though the permitted hatmana, but it's muktzah, and you're not going to be able to go ahead and get to it. Hanuk B'Vatem, we shall return to the fourth parak in Masechtas Shabbos, which spoke about the laws of Atmana, and we started the fifth parak B'Mehema, which talks about the malacha being done by an animal. So we said that, and these were all case specific, as we mentioned in the Gemara, that a male camel could go out with a halter. Now, there's a machlekes in the Gemara, could you go out with a nose ring? Because that's netirusi sirasa, that's excessive restraint. That's a machlekes if that's considered a masai or not. Then we spoke about a naka, a female camel, with a nose ring, which is more excessive, but that's because it's more wild. But no, you cannot go out with a halter, which is less. That's going to be considered as a masa because it's not protecting it. So then it's unnecessary. It's just a load. Spoke about the luvdikim, those more wild donkeys, that they go out with a prumbia with a bit. Although we said that it could also go out with an after too. And Tais discussed that that's not a raya to excessive restraint because it's very close for it. And we said a horse could go out with the collar, and also all animals that have collars could go out with collars. Thank you to any time for hosting us.